Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Transfer Portal podcast presented by NoContextCFB. We're going into week 5. This college football season is zooming right along. Preview pod, as always, weekly. Joining us today, Chris Hassel of CBS Sports. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I'm sad that the season is zooming along so fast, but I can't complain. We're right in the meat of it now. Conference is getting going. It's going to be fun. This weekend might be the best weekend of the season.
Yeah, a lot of great games. This is a top-tier slate, as Chris said. We're getting into the meat of conference play. Let's just jump straight into it. This is the best slate we've seen yet. There are a lot of storylines. What do we think the biggest one is? Chris, we'll start with you.
Wow. I feel like it's which SEC team is going to be that next team behind Alabama and Georgia, or Georgia and Alabama, whichever way you want to put them right now. And, you know, last week we saw Tennessee try to stake that claim. I know Texas A&M fans are still thinking that they're in the mix, but a huge game this week in Oxford where, you know, two undefeated teams meet each other, Kentucky and Ole Miss, and the winner of that game is going to feel the exact same way that maybe they are the third best team. Because I think once we get that third best team is eventually going to challenge for a playoff berth. So I feel like right now that's the biggest storyline. It's coming out of the best conference. And there's still Arkansas fans probably still think that they have a chance. I mean, if they could pull the huge upset against Alabama this week, I know they feel like they totally gave it away against A&M, and they kind of did, but they've got Alabama coming to their place. And if they can get that game, they're in the mix as well. So I think that's really intriguing in this weekend, even though Tennessee is off. This weekend's going to go a long way in figuring out who that third team is going to be.
I think for me, the most interesting storyline is how Oklahoma bounces back from losing again to Kansas State, their kryptonite. I think everybody is writing off Oklahoma right now. If they have trouble stopping the run against Kansas State, they're going to have a really hard time stopping the run against TCU and Kendre Miller and Amari DeMercado. Like, that is a fast team, and I don't think Oklahoma has the speed for it. We'll talk about the game a little bit later, but we know that, remember the last time Oklahoma lost to Kansas State at home? That was 2020. The next week they go to Iowa State and they lose again, back-to-back games. I feel like we could be seeing a similar situation, and we'll have to see if Oklahoma is ready for the test in Fort Worth.
So I just want to tail off Chris's point because he pretty much stole my point verbatim.
Sorry, Doug.
It's all good. With the SEC, mainly instead of focusing like on the West, we'll focus partially on the West. I just want to see what team which clock will strike midnight next. You have Kentucky and Ole Miss, both battle undefeated. Kentucky looked kind of shaky last week against Northern Illinois. Will their clock strike midnight? We know Ole Miss's will soon. It might be today. If not today, then you see the SEC West. It's still pretty brutal. So it's just like to see which clock strikes next and whether these teams can eventually get a New Year's Six berth or they end up at the Citrus Bowl. And then let me just pivot real quick. I just want to see the rest of the Big 12 because it's so open. You have your proverbial favorite Oklahoma losing. You have a rematch this week between Oklahoma State and Baylor. And then you have Texas and West Virginia fighting for a berth at the Armed Forces Bowl. So you just got a lot of very interesting options in a Big 12 title race. So that's my big storyline for conference play.
Yeah, now that I think about it, we have 2 conference title game rematches from last year. Obviously, Michigan and Iowa, and then Oklahoma State Baylor. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. I'm going to jump up north, go to the Big Ten. Mel Tucker, what he's done at Michigan State is not what people would call ideal. Losing to Washington, Washington's a good team. Losing to Minnesota, Minnesota's a good team. But the way that they lost to those teams, it was because of defense. What is Mel Tucker's bread and butter? He was the secondary coach at Alabama. The fact that their passing defense is as bad as it is shocking. Their quarterback play is not good. Their run game is not very consistent. They have good playmakers on the outside, but I mean, even last week with Keon Coleman, he had his struggles. They need to get those guys the ball in space. They have a A game this week against Maryland. Well, Maryland's going to throw the ball. Hopefully, Talia and Rakim Jarrett are good to go because that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. If Mel Tucker cannot stop this Maryland offense, it's going to be a long stretch for Sparty. This is a bad stretch for them. They play some of the best teams in the Big Ten all in a row. That there's a genuine chance that they could go 2-5 as their next record over the first 7 games of the season. It's that bad. So
seems a little early for giving him a nearly $10 million a year contract after the 11 win. Yeah, great season last year, but they have crashed down to earth this season. I think Maryland is going to give them a real game. I had Maryland earlier this season. They have one of the best wide receiver cores in the country, as you guys know, and they gave Michigan a really good game last week.
Yeah, if they can give the Michigan defense a good run for their money, well, Michigan State's going to have another thing coming. Mel Tucker's obviously not under any pressure of getting fired. He's just got paid a boatload of money. But who is a coach that's under a lot of pressure? Maybe not this week. They may not get fired after this week, like maybe one coach might. But who's a coach that just needs to start getting some more success so they can keep their tenure at their current program?
I think Brian Harsin's the first name that comes up because he's at the biggest program right now and under the most fire. But I'm going to go with a guy who I think might also be done this week, and it's Karl Dorrell at Colorado. They're 0-4 this season, all 4 losses by 25 plus. They're a 17.5-point underdog against Arizona this week. Colorado is a program that has they won a national title a little more than 30 years ago, and they've just, ever since, it seems like the Cordell Stewart, a little bit after that, they've fallen off a cliff. And Dorrell, they thought they had high hopes for him. He won, I think it was Pac-12 Coach of the Year in the COVID season 2020, but they were 4-2. They go 4-8 last year, and now this year they are one of the worst 5 teams in the country right now. Out of 131, they might be 130 or so. And if they get blown out again, I think that might be it for Karl Dorrell.
Dylan?
Yeah, and during our Pac-12 preview show, I picked Colorado to go 0-12. I just don't see them going 1-11. Like, that just seems like it's too good to be true for this team, because they were not great last year either. They really struggled against some pretty inferior opponents comparatively, and it just seemed like they got worse over the offseason, and they are worse, and it didn't seem like they could have gone much worse from what they did last year. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good pick. I'm going with another Pac-12 guy, and David Shaw. I don't think he's going to get fired after Oregon. I really, really don't, because they're already a huge underdog going into Austin Stadium. But the Stanford squads of old are so long gone. They've always been such a physical team, a team that you have to earn a win against. You have to earn every rep against. And they're just getting pushed around out there. And I expect that to happen again at Austin Stadium. Stanford of old, in the early David Shaw days where, even if they weren't contending for a Pac-12 North title, they were still going to play spoiler and, ruin the season for other people that are contending. But this Stanford team, I don't even expect them to do anything like that this year. If they don't win one game against Oregon, Oregon State, and Notre Dame in the next couple of weeks, I think it might be time for David Shaw to be done at Stanford.
First answer is obviously Brian Harsin, but I'll go with SEC, but a different coach. Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri. Missouri, to be honest, they stink. Just have to be honest with you. They should not have lost that game to Auburn, with some of the awful decision-making I've seen. Playing for a field goal when you had first and goal. Just mental lapses with the offsides that led to the field goal. You should not have stretched your arm out trying to score that touchdown at the end. Anyways, so Barry Odom got fired for being 500. Drinkwitz is he's one game below 500. And on top of that, you see Luther Burden. Even though he says he's committed, it's clearly obvious that he's going to transfer out at the end of the season if there aren't any changes. They just look lackluster offensively anytime they play a team with a pulse. And it's just not standard. I honestly think Vandy is a better team than Missouri at this stage in terms of coaching. Not in terms of talent, because Missouri is clearly a better talented team, but Missouri is probably the second worst team in SEC, maybe even the worst. They're that bad. And I can see Eli getting the boot, not this week because they play Georgia, but probably the end of the season if things don't turn around.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the Big Ten once again. This is a coach a lot of people seem to have a lot of respect for, and as they should. He's won multiple division titles. But what Pat Fitzgerald is doing at Northwestern right now is not good. You lose back-to-back-to-back games against Duke. Not a bad football team, but come on, it's Duke. Southern Illinois, go Salukis, but once again, come on. And then you lose this last week against Miami of Ohio, this what looks like possibly the superior Miami. It's just we can't be expecting, oh, Pat Fitzgerald, it's every other year he's going to have a good season. Well, every other year would mean 2 years ago, yeah, he did something. This year, he's not doing anything. This Northwestern team's on a down spiral. Schedule's not favorable by any means. They could very well end up going 2-10, 3-9. And I think we got to start having discussions about Pat Fitzgerald finding this as his final year in Evanston.
It's amazing how feast or famine he is. I mean, either they are maybe the worst team in the Big Ten, or they're in the Big Ten championship game getting their ass handed to them by a team over on the east side. I don't get it, because what he's done at Northwestern in those 2 seasons, winning the division, is something I don't know that any other coach could do. But when they're bad, they are really, really bad. And they finished last season losing their last 6 games in conference play. They were 1-8 in the Big Ten. I don't think he's under any pressure, because I know he's turned down a lot of huge jobs, including jobs, I think, in the NFL. But it is really head-scratching to see how bad that they can be. And they might not win more than 1 or 2 games this year again. Somehow they beat Nebraska week 1, which goes to show you how bad Nebraska is.
Yeah, well, their coach is already gone. So yeah. that one's already happened. But Big Ten West, Northwestern, it's always such a weird thing. What's another either conference or division, because obviously not every conference has divisions. What's a race that's going on in the country right now that over the first few weeks is like, wow, this could end up finishing with some electricity?
I think we've kind of hit on it just a little bit when looking at storylines, but the Big 12 is massively up for grabs. I mean, you look at the standings right now, and most teams have played 1 game, but you look at the teams that are 1-0 and the teams that are 0-1. And all the teams besides Kansas that are 1-0 have a non-conference blemish, like just kind of a bad loss. And when you look at the teams that are 0-1, they mostly have a good non-conference win outside of Oklahoma. Iowa State beat Iowa. That's a pretty good non-conference win. And everything is like opposite of what we thought it would be going into last week. I mean, you had teams like Kansas State taking lumps in the non-con to Tulsa, and then they turn around and they knock off Oklahoma. So I don't know what to make of the Big 12. It seems like they are just going to cannibalize each other, and 6-3 might get you into a Big 12 championship game. I just don't see how we get any kind of playoff team out of there, because I think it seems to me like every team is going to have a couple losses.
I mean, if you're a conference and you end with the number 12, it just seems like cannibalization is just a move for you. Pac-12, Big 12, it seems like it happens every year. But the Big 12 is going to be super exciting to watch. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think the ACC Atlantic could be more up for grabs than people might think. I know Clemson is the clear front runner. A lot of people have them in their playoff, but the NC State Clemson game could honestly be a deciding factor in who ends up in Charlotte. But you can't sleep on Florida State. You can't sleep on Wake Forest. And you can't sleep on Syracuse, which I cannot believe I'm saying in week 5. But you can't sleep on Syracuse. This is a really good football team, and they've proven it. I think Louisville could play a spoiler late in the season. I don't think they'll compete for the division at all, but I think they could pull off, an upset late in the season. I know most people would be quick to put Clemson in the title game. I probably would too. But I'm anticipating something crazy happening in this division for some reason. Let's see Florida State or Syracuse in Charlotte. To hell with it. Let's see it.
For once, I'm actually going off the beaten path. That's usually not my strong suit. But the whole entire Mountain West, nothing makes sense with that whole conference. Your prohibitive favorite, your defending champion, Utah State's 1-3. They play BYU this week. They're going to be 1-4. Utah State's already had a loss in conference. It's not great looking for them this year. You have Boise State, who started quarterback, decided to transfer this past week. Not looking great for them, and they had a really bad loss this past week. You have Air Force that somehow lost to Wyoming, and Wyoming's not really nothing to write home about. So you just have all this cannibalism, at least on the mountain side. And on the west side, it's a lot of transition. You have first-year coaches in Fresno State, Hawaii, Nevada, and then you have teams that are returning their coaches, but it's still not necessarily great. And UNLV and San Jose State. Like San Diego State should probably win that West Division, but like I said, everything in this conference, nothing has made sense so far this year. So it's just really intriguing race. Well, look, there won't be a New Year's Six bid on the line this year for the Mountain West. Just something fun to watch out for.
I have a quick question. Is there any like really good teams in the American this year? It doesn't seem like it. ECU, we always like, obviously week one, there was that whole NC State fiasco. Then you have Cincinnati. Cincinnati doesn't look very impressive to me. They were keeping it close with Arkansas. And in fact, they probably could have beaten Arkansas if their quarterback could hit a deep throw. Houston, wow, they are a disappointment. We thought that they could easily take the group of five New Year's Six spot, and they just are not a good football team. It hurts losing Derek Parrish for the year, one of their best defensive linemen, but just that entire team is not fun to watch. This was a conference that we had very high expectations for, even UCF. UCF dropped. I don't even know what to say about UCF because I'm not a fan of Gus Malzahn. That game with Louisville was just not football I want to rewatch. It's so weird that we had such high expectations for this conference. We thought, oh, this is going to be between guys like Memphis isn't the worst team. I mean, we could talk about other teams, but I just think this is UCF or Cincinnati's conference to lose, which makes no sense, seeing that we had such high expectations for a Houston team that people said, you know what, Cincinnati ran the table last year. Houston could be that team this year. And that is just so far from the case.
Yeah, every team already has a loss. They don't have a single team in the top 25 in the AP poll. SMU missed a big opportunity last week against TCU. Yeah, I don't know. I think that could be an interesting race because I don't know who stands out. If it's Cincinnati, maybe. I don't know. They were all right against Arkansas, and they haven't really been tested in many other games. Tulane has a good non-conference win against Kansas State, but
they just lost to Southern Miss.
Yeah, Southern Miss. I mean, how do you lose to? You're right. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
They are just not the Fun Belt. It's a shame. The Fun Belt is fun. That's another conference we could have talked about.
It's gotten a lot better too. I really like what the Sun Belt has become, and it's kind of gone under the radar nationally. The teams that have joined, like there wasn't a lot said about when Marshall and Old Dominion and James Madison joined up in the non-con, Southern Miss as well in the other division. But James Madison hasn't lost. I mean, they joined up their first season in the FBS and they're 3-0 and look really good. I think the Sun Belt has a chance to be maybe the next best conference. The group of after those teams, those handful of teams leave the American for the Big 12, the Houstons, the Cincinnatis, the UCFs. I think the Sun Belt might actually end up being that the sexiest group of five conference.
I completely agree.
James Madison might honestly go undefeated. Like James Madison's defense is nasty, and their offense can obviously put up points. They played really, really well against App State. I really didn't think they would win that game, but after that game, I think their schedule is winnable. I think they could honestly be, in their first season in the FBS undefeated, but they can't obviously, be bowl eligible because it's the first year in the FBS.
That's a shame. It's too bad. It's really too bad. It's not fair for the kids. I mean,
yeah.
Fix this, please, NCAA. Fix this. There's no reason that they shouldn't be playing in a bowl game. If you win 6 games, you deserve it. And we also just talked about the Fun Belt. We didn't talk about arguably the most fun team in the country, Coastal.
Yep.
Just shows you how stacked of a conference that is. I mean,
they and James Madison, the two unbeaten teams in the Sun Belt right now. Coastal, really, really fun team to watch. They've had some nail biters, some tight games, but they barely got by Gardner Webb. They were losing in the fourth quarter to Buffalo, but you play to win the game, and they've done that. I don't know if they're as good as they have been in the last couple of years, but they're winning games, and they got a great coach who I don't know how much longer he'll be there, but got him for the time being.
Yeah, Chadwell's going to be a hot name in the market for a coaching carousel. Okay, we need to start getting to this week's college football. One game to watch that, it doesn't have to be the best game, doesn't have to be the most iconic game, just one game that really sticks out to you this week.
I feel like I'm cherry picking because I am picking one of the best games. It's the one that stands out to me is Kentucky at Ole Miss, because those are teams that just don't get the shine in the SEC that the upper crust does. And then you go down one tier and you've got the Floridas and the Tennessees and the A&Ms, and then it's down to like the third tier where you have Kentucky and Ole Miss, and two teams that right now really embracing football. You got the Lane train at Ole Miss, and Kentucky with the little strife between the football program and the basketball team with Mark Stoops. They've got Will Levis, who's a potential, top draft pick at quarterback. That's going to be a really fun game. And that's where my coworker Josh Pate is going to that game this week. He decided on that game over Alabama, Arkansas, and some people are giving him some grief, but I think that has a chance to be the best game in the country this week.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth because I picked Kentucky Ole Miss as well. So I did write a backup because I had a feeling somebody was going to take that one. Top 15 matchup, obviously a really good one and a headliner for this weekend. Wake Forest, Florida State is one that I am crazy excited about. And I really like that it's in that 12:30 slot. It's going to compete with Oklahoma State and Baylor, which obviously that one's got the storylines as well, being a Big 12 title game matchup, rematch from last year. But I didn't expect Florida State to be this good. I knew they were going to take a jump. I didn't think they were going to come into this game being 4-0. And I didn't expect to be able to say that I believe their offense can keep up with Wake Forest in week 5 of this season. I know Wake Forest, played a shootout last week against Clemson, which in my opinion, I thought they were going to lose. If they were to lose, I thought they were going to lose in a really, defensive game. I know Wake Forest defense wasn't very good, but I didn't expect Clemson to put up 51. And I know that Florida State's rushing attack is probably one of the best three-headed monsters in the country. And I think they're going to show up in this game. I like Florida State to make a statement and say, hey, we're here in the ACC and we can beat the best of the best.
All righty. You stole mine right out of my mouth.
All right. Stealing trade. No.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go with our actual game of the week that we'll cover later. NC State Clemson. It's a rivalry game, the Textile Bowl, but also a revenge game because NC State upset Clemson last year and they won. Was it double overtime? Correct? Am I wrong? It was an overtime game for sure. I just wasn't sure whether it was double.
I think it was 2.
Okay. Double overtime. Anyways, we've seen Clemson discover that they discovered a forward pass, which is beautiful because we definitely missed that after last year because watching those games were pretty brutal. NC State's passing attack led by Devin Leary still back on track. NC State's looked pretty good. Beat a fairly decent Texas Tech team. I'm just curious because, like you said, we talked about earlier that ACC race. This could definitely be shape the dynamic of not only that division race but the entire ACC or even the college football playoff if NC State wins. So I'm just intrigued by that, and honestly, I think I'll cover the pick later. But all in all, it's going to be very entertaining. There's a reason why it's a game of the week for a reason.
All right. I'm surprised no one said this, and thank you for not stealing my pick, Doug. Rock Chalk. Kansas football is 4-0. Who would have thought it? It's like that one video from Hot Ones. Man, who would have thought this? Us too. Kansas is 4-0 playing Iowa State. Vegas is saying, Kansas, you're underdogs. There's probably a reason for that, but I freaking love this Kansas team. Jalen Daniels is a stud quarterback. People say, oh, Heisman. Some people are also going to say, well, slow your roll. He's actually playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, which once again, who would have thought that going into this season? This Kansas team is so exciting. And it's not even just because it's Kansas. They're actually a fun offense to watch. They had a great game last week against Duke. I'm going to say this again. Who would have thought that would have been a good game coming into this season.
Mm-hmm.
Now they play an Iowa State team that has momentum. They had to win over Iowa. They looked very dominant against an Ohio team that had a half-decent win against FAU. Kansas can make a massive statement by beating Iowa State. And if they win that game, they will not only have already covered their win total, they will double it by having 5 wins instead of a 2.5 win total, which I think is insane before we hit the halfway point in the season.
Lance Leipold, he can if they keep racking up these wins, he can write his ticket anywhere with what he's done at Kansas. It's incredible.
Yeah, if Nebraska hasn't written 17 blank checks and the entirety of Warren Buffett's net worth to him, they're doing something wrong. He just
should turn it down. And he should turn it down. Honestly, there's no pressure to win at Kansas. Just
true.
Enjoy your statue. Enjoy your statue, man. Enjoy your statue. Make 500 every other year. You're set for life.
You know what? Kansas, maybe they're the football school. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're worrying about UK and not KU. Have we thought about that? I don't know. I am. All right, player focus. We're going to do one Power 5, one Group of 5 / FCS. Chris, what you got for us?
You want me to do both at the same time or just Group of 5 or Power 5 first? Okay, both of them. I'll start with Power 5. Big Penix energy is that he's selling those shirts, right? He's making a lot of money. Michael Penix, UCLA quarterback, got a Friday night showcase. Did I say UCLA? I meant Washington quarterback taking on UCLA in a Friday night showcase at the Rose Bowl. You know, this is a kid there was a lot of hype around him and Indiana going into last season. It's easy to forget because they were so bad, but they were a top 20 team. And they came into the season with all kinds of expectations for him and the program. He lasted like 5 games, and I don't think the team won a single Big Ten game. And he transferred out, goes to Washington on the West Coast. You guys know, you kind of get forgotten about, especially early in the season. He has looked great. And if he goes out on Friday night and continues to look that way, I think there might be some people to say, wow, not only can Washington maybe run the table and become a playoff team, maybe he's somebody to look at in the Heisman race as well. And UCLA, they haven't lost yet. They've had close calls, and I expect them to have probably their biggest crowd of the season. I don't know how many of them will be Washington fans, but I think that'll be a fun game to watch. But Michael Penix is the guy I'm watching. And then Group of 5, I think you guys have had this guy before, but worth mentioning again, Dwayne McBride, UAB running back. He is at Rice on Saturday. I expect him to put up some big numbers. The kid is averaging 200 rushing yards a game this season. He's only played in 2 games. He didn't play in the first game, and UAB had a bye last week. So he hasn't qualified for a lot of rushing stats, but this is a kid who might end up leading the country in rushing yards this season. I've done a lot of UAB games, and I called his first few games, and he would only get a couple carries a game, but it seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was breaking off a 40-yard touchdown run. He just has a little bit of magic to him. He's not like a blazing fast guy. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he just has a knack for making big plays, and I love watching him play and run. And 200 yards a game, especially this day and age, where you don't see running backs putting up those kind of numbers. It's very impressive.
Could we zoom out for a hot minute about some of the players and the teams that we've talked about? Just like think about talking about this stuff in the middle of August, early August. We're talking about Jalen Daniels as like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. We're talking about Florida State as an ACC contender. We're talking about, who's the other team we just talked about? Washington, Michael Penix as a Heisman contender. Like, try telling all of that to somebody in the beginning of August. It's just crazy to think about. But you're not wrong. I mean, Michael Penix has been absolutely reborn in Seattle. And I really like to see, them be competitive again in the Pac-12. It makes the Pac-12 more fun, especially in the North. In my Power 5 pick, I'm going with Rocket Sanders. He's in the top 10 in Division I in rushing yards. Kind of got contained a little bit against Texas A&M last week. Obviously, that's a very good defensive team in Texas A&M, but now it's a whole different monster in Alabama this week. Alabama has the 4th best rushing defense in the country. Obviously, they played some cupcakes, of course, as they do. It's Alabama. But Arkansas's run game has been extremely effective when they win games. Like, that's a premier reason why they win games with him and KJ Jefferson. They need to get it back on track if they have a chance of beating Alabama, which a lot of their fans apparently do. I don't think they do, but I do think that if they win, it's going to be on the back of Rocket Sanders. And then in the group of five, I'm going with the best receiver in the FBS right now, Rashee Rice from SMU. This man is absolutely tearing up the country right now, and he's going to face a very talented UCF secondary that's led by Quadric Bullard and Justin Hodges. Like, those guys are studs, and they're allowing, I think it's like 49% completion percentage in the first couple games, which is nuts to think about. So if Rashee Rice is going to help SMU win this game, he's got to put up 100, 150 plus. He kind of got contained when they played last year, if like 75 yards and a touchdown is contained to his standards. But he's just been tearing up everybody, and I expect that to continue, but probably not to the level that we've seen with like 180, 200-yard games, but he'll go off. I think he will.
Alrighty. Yeah, so I'm just going off the beaten path once again. I'm going to talk about the Washington State Cal matchup, and I'll go with Christian Mejia, the nose tackle from Washington State University. Jaden Knott's an amazing running back, one of the best that we've seen in the country. And Washington State's actually is battle tested because they faced Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving to start off the year. And that's just a key matchup I'm looking forward towards to. Mainly because if Washington State can somewhat contain Ott, they could probably win. Washington State has the offense. I don't think Cal can match up the offense. But if Jaden Ott goes off, then who knows? Like, we've seen Washington State blow leads like they did last week. But you never know. But it's a key matchup to watch out for. And then in terms of my group of five pick, I'm going with Ronald Awatt from UTEP. So funny stat. So whenever Ronald rushes for 50 yards or more, UTEP has won twice, including being Boise State last week. When he hasn't, they've lost other games. We talked about Charlotte earlier during our week 0 focus, how they couldn't really stop a nosebleed, and they kind of shown so far this season that they haven't really fixed their defense. So if AY keeps going, UTEP should win, and they should be on the march to bowl eligibility again, which is really rare for UTEP because it's going to be their second year in a row, which I don't remember last time they've done that.
It's been a long time, if it has ever happened, to be quite honest. I'm going to go back to the Big 12. Blake Shapen, the quarterback for Baylor, they took the chance on the guy. They said, you know what, Blake, this is your job. We're going to let Jerry Bohannon go into the portal, and we're going to let you lead us to back-to-back Big 12 titles. And they've looked good. They obviously had the hiccup against BYU. Baylor was also a team I was just kind of low on. I thought they lost a lot of returning, productivity. Obviously lost some to the draft portal. So I was very pessimistic about this team. They played well against Iowa State. Now they got to play Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's a team that, have they really been tested? Central Michigan's defense is awful. Arizona State is not a very good football team. This is going to be a fun matchup because Baylor's battle tested. Oklahoma State isn't. But Baylor is also lower ranked for reasons kind of unbeknownst to me. Obviously, they have the loss, but Oklahoma State has played quite literally nobody. Blake Shapen, if you're going to lead this team to victory, that's a heck of a feat. Go to the group of five. This isn't about a team winning a game. This is about a guy boosting his draft stock. Grayson McCall is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. He's so fun to watch. He does not turn the ball over. And Coastal has a chance to pad his stats against a Georgia Southern defense that is not that good. Obviously Nebraska has the offensive talent to do it against anybody. Georgia Southern gave up a decent amount of points last week. I think that this could be a week where Coastal's like, yeah, we're going to win this game, but we're also going to help our guy that has led our entire program throughout the last few years to this historic area where Coastal has never been. And Brace McCall, this is your time to shine. This is your national spotlight. I expect a massive statistical game for him. Moving on, we've got picks. As we do every week, 10 games, 10 probably not the best games because we're not going to pick Arkansas, Alabama, because I feel like everyone's going to pick Alabama. We're going to pick games that actually have a chance of being split. We're going to start off Friday night at the Rose Bowl in front of 17 whole people. Washington plays UCLA. Chris, are you going with your guy, Big Penix Energy?
I have to, right? You have to. If he's my guy going into this week, I'm going to ride with him. I feel like Washington is the superior team. They haven't allowed a sack this season. Penix and his escapability is one of the reasons why. And we've hit on it. Not much of a home field advantage for UCLA. So I'm going Washington.
Yeah, I'm going to go Washington on the road as well. I just think Washington's playmakers are just too elite for really any defense in the country. I mean, Romeo Dunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, that trio right there is insane. And UCLA has played solid defensively. Of course, they've played, a pretty cupcake schedule as well that they've kind of barely skid by. They looked kind of tough against Bowling Green. Thought they were going to lose against South Alabama, but it was the same thing with Michigan State going into that game. They were playing pretty well comparatively, I guess, defensively before they got torn up. I kind of expect the same thing here. I think UW puts up 40 again. I got them winning by double digits.
All right. So before I give my pick, two things. One, Jimmy Lake is a criminal because look at this turnaround really quick from Washington. Like, that man should not touch a football field anytime in the near future. Two, whose idea was it to schedule a UCLA game on a Friday night? Like, we saw the attendance for a Saturday noon game. You think a Friday night's going to be better for UCLA? Like, the rules. You got to stick with Saturday, like, at 4 o'clock or wherever. Because otherwise,
at least the sun's down, so they won't be at the beach or anything. I mean, they're not going to be soaking up the sun. I don't know. Maybe they try Friday because Saturday doesn't work. I mean, how could it be worse? Can it be worse? I'm not sure that it can.
That's true. So now to the actual pick. Give me UCLA, mainly because nothing about that program has made any sort of sense since Chip Kelly got there. They'll look pretty good against teams that they should beat, and they do beat. And then you have cases where they're such an up and down team. They'll play it down to the level of competition. They'll play up to level competition. I think UCLA wins it just to sheer nature, and then they'll probably lose their next game because that's what they do. No logic otherwise, UCLA.
You know what? Sometimes the worst logic is the best logic. I'm glad you picked UCLA so we don't cause a college game day, sweep with a team, which means they end up losing. I'm going to take Washington. I love that offense. As long as the Washington media department doesn't lose, one of their drones in the midair and we have to have a delay, I will take the Huskies. Going into the Saturday slate. By the way, why is this an 11 a.m. kick? Kentucky at Ole Miss. What the heck are we doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure either because it's usually if there's a big game at noon Eastern time, it's it's on Fox. It's the big noon kickoff, but probably not going to be as good an atmosphere as it could have been if it was later. But I thought I was going to take Kentucky in this game because they're battle tested, and Ole Miss really isn't. But I am going to go with Ole Miss. The line is really crept up. It's Ole Miss by a touchdown now. I think Lane Kiffin's going to have a little something in store, and they're going to be able to outscore Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm rolling with Ole Miss at home as well. I think the rushing attack of Quinshon Judkins and Zach Evans is one of the best duos in the country. I honestly didn't think Judkins would break out the way he has. I thought it was Zach Evans' room to run away with, but Judkins has been super impressive. They're fourth in the country in rushing. I think they're going to keep that rolling against Kentucky. And yeah, like you said, Chris, I don't think Kentucky can keep up with the scoring attack and potency of Ole Miss.
Give me Ole Miss, mainly because Kentucky looked really shaky last week, and I don't trust them on the road in an environment with the team this good in Ole Miss. I don't completely buy Ole Miss, but I trust them a lot more than I do Kentucky. Give me the Rebels.
Well, now we're going to have the college game day because I'm also going Ole Miss. Levis is going to give Ole Miss 1 or 2 free possessions. That's going to be enough for them to win the game. We've talked about Zach Evans. I'm surprised we haven't seen more Ulysses Bentley, but you know what? Zach Evans is pretty much all you need. Judkins also, but Zach Evans is such a talented running back. I will take Ole Miss as well. Now we're going to go to a revenge game. Oklahoma is upset. TCU is a good football team, though, and they're at home. Who are we taking, Chris?
Yeah, you got Sonny Dykes. He won the big game last week, going back to SMU and winning in a really hostile environment. But I don't think Oklahoma is going to lose 2 in a row here. I think that they maybe got a little bit of a wake up call last week against Kansas State. They're better defensively, I think, than they showed in that game. I've got Oklahoma winning this.
So I originally put Oklahoma down because I thought the exact same way. Like I didn't see them winning, I didn't see them losing back-to-back games. But when I watch this TCU team, the speed that they have is just incredible to me. And watching Kansas State rip them apart last week makes me think that I don't think they can make that quick of an adjustment from week one to the next, especially in that environment in TCU. So I think we're going to see, like I said earlier, I think we're going to see similar to the 2020 season. I think Oklahoma is going to fall again to TCU. And I also did that because I had a feeling that we were going to have a college game day thing where everybody picks Oklahoma, because so far that seems to be the case in our pick sheet right now. So I'll bite the bullet. I'll pick TCU.
Good thing you picked TCU, because I'm picking Oklahoma. I trust Brent Venables, even though it will take time for him to get the issue of tackling fixed at that program. I do think that they can work on enough to handle TCU this week. I also don't really buy Sonny Dykes, but it's a whole different conversation for a whole different day. But yeah, just give me Oklahoma.
I think TCU is a very very good football team. Oklahoma's mad. I'm not going to bet against a very good football team coming off a bad loss, especially when they've got a good coach like Brent Venables. I completely trust him. Dylan Gabriel's looked good. I like TCU. They can run the ball. Quentin Johnston's a very good wide receiver. This is just a spot, though. Sometimes you just got to pick on the spot. I like Oklahoma coming off a loss better than I like TCU coming off a win where they also weren't super impressive against SMU. I'll say that. So Oklahoma for me, I also have them by 20. So I'll just throw the random win prediction out there. Oklahoma State at Baylor, the other massive game in the Big 12. There's actually a few of them, but the Big 12 title game rematch from last year.
I just don't know enough about Oklahoma State yet. They gave up 44 points to Central Michigan in week one. They haven't really played anybody. Baylor just went into Iowa State and beat the Cyclones pretty soundly. That score really wasn't as close late in that game as it looked in the box score. They were up 17 points with like 9 minutes to go. So Baylor has shown it to me this season, and Oklahoma State hasn't. So I'm going with the Bears.
Yeah, I'm also going to roll with the Bears here. I think that it's kind of a coin flip to me between these two teams because, like you said, Oklahoma State just hasn't really proven anything. I think the one thing that maybe we've gotten the most from is that Spencer Sanders seems to be on another level right now. He's playing much better than we've seen before, but I know this Oklahoma State team's probably going to be angry, just like Oklahoma is, trying to avenge that loss. But one of the biggest reasons why I'm picking Baylor in this game is because I absolutely love Richard Reese. He is a phenomenal player. I thought they were going to have a hard time replacing Abram Smith at that running back spot, but man, he's a 5'9" freshman that has just taken off, and he's played really well the last couple of weeks. I think he's going to score late in this game to make it to give them a dagger. I like Baylor in a close one.
Doug, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. We're not getting game day. Give me Oklahoma State. This year, I actually do like Spencer Sanders, and I think he's actually a quality, excellent quarterback for a Power 5 team compared to last year. I thought he was barely FBS level, but that's a whole different story for a whole different day. Yeah, but we're not getting game day. Oklahoma State.
I'm not going to get game day at all because I'm going to split. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Oklahoma State. I know more about Baylor. I'm completely going reverse psychology. I know more about Baylor. I like this team. That makes me think Oklahoma State. For some odd reason, maybe it's my brain just, wanting to be different. Whatever, I'll take the loss if it comes. But I think this Oklahoma State team has something to prove this year. Wake Forest at Florida State. Probably not the biggest game in the ACC, but very well could be the best.
This is interesting because I know Wake, as of early in the week, didn't really want to travel down to Tallahassee because of the hurricane issues. And Florida State is saying, come on down. We're playing it. We're kicking off. Whatever the game time says, that's what's going to happen. And we'll see how it turns out throughout the week. I think they'll end up playing this game at Doak, and I think that's going to be the difference. The fan base is as fired up as they've been in a long time. They have proven it with a couple of good wins. I'm not going to say great, but a couple of good wins. LSU, Louisville. I think Florida State gets it done. Wake, come down spot. You almost get Clemson, but you go into the double overtime and you don't get it done. And I think Florida State is going to remain unbeaten.
Yeah, ditto. I absolutely love this Florida State team. I was high on them actually coming into last year. I thought they were going to be bowl eligible last year. Fell a little bit short, but I didn't expect them to enter this game 4-0, and I expect them to leave this game 5-0. And I think, like you said, the atmosphere is going to be the difference. I hope the game can be played at Doak because that is just a phenomenal, just atmosphere. It's really unbeaten on that side of the country, in my opinion. And, I think you said they were good wins. I think comparatively to where this program has been, they're great wins against LSU and Louisville because they just weren't getting wins like that before. And I think they get another really big one. They haven't won a ranked game, and I think I think it was like 2 years ago. I think they beat North Carolina. So it feels like it's been a while because this program's been through a lot.
Yep, Sam Howell, kryptonite. I'll go Wake Forest mainly because I do think they have enough firepower to hold off Florida State. The main concern is that Wake cannot stop a nosebleed to save their lives. Like that defense it's been a recurring issue too. It's been an issue for the past few years. Once Wake discovered an offense, their defense kind of went away. We saw that with Liberty. They let their foot off the pedal, and next thing you know, Liberty comes all the way back. We saw that with Clemson. Makes it seem like they have offense again. But in the end, I just do think that Florida State's not all the way there yet. They have shown a lot of potential, but they have kept it close with quite a few teams that they should not have kept it close with. Give me Wake Forest and a nail biter. I also do think Doak won't be completely full because I do think people will be evacuated as well by then. So,
thank you for taking Wake so we don't get College Game Day. I love Florida State in this spot. I think that this is going to be a massive win. They have momentum. Wake Forest, I really worry about their defense. I don't know how they're going to be able to stop a guy like, Johnny Wilson because he is freaking massive. He's 6'7". I don't know how that's legal for a wide receiver. And I just think that Florida State is well coached. One thing I did not think I would say this year with Mike Norvell. He's done a lot to save his job. I love Florida State in this spot. I'm going to go to the other amazing Big 12 game. This is probably game of the year. Iowa State at Kansas.
Yeah, it was close to being unbeaten against unbeaten, but Iowa State couldn't get past Baylor last week. The Cyclones are better than they showed against Baylor, I think, anyway. Kansas, feel-good story. They had the huge game last week against Duke. They sold it out. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about ticket sales for this week. My guess is they're coming down, even though they won. It might come down a little bit. I think Iowa State's the better team. So I'm picking Iowa State to win this game.
A couple of years ago, I made a pact that I would never pick against UAB. That was like my feel-good team. And I won almost every time. I think every time up to last year, the Independence Bowl. I picked them to lose to BYU, and I was wrong. And I'm making that same pact with Kansas this year. So I'm picking Kansas to beat Iowa State. If we pick Kansas against Oklahoma, I'm picking Kansas and looking like a fool. I don't care. I love this team. I love this program. Give me Rock Chalk.
The defending national champions in basketball will win this game. Give me the Jayhawks.
I really want to take Iowa State. I really do. I think they're the better team. But I've also picked against teams that are like feel-good stories. UTSA last year was a feel-good story. Got to feel great for meet. Then I picked against them this year. Well, they won. So I was proven wrong. I'm not going to make that same mistake again. I'm going down with the Rock Chalk Jayhawks.
Wow. So I'm the only one. I'm the only one on Iowa State. Okay.
We're not getting game day, though.
No, if you're right, you get to boast over all of us. So you have that.
You'll have that. Going to go down to a very interesting matchup. This is always a very fun matchup to watch. Texas A&M goes into Starkville. They're going to have the cowbells going loud playing Mississippi State.
I've gone back and forth on this one. I thought I would pick A&M, but I'm not going to. This is another one of those weird lines. I think Mississippi State's like a touchdown favorite. A&M just doesn't have it offensively, and Mississippi State does. I think they're just going to outscore them, plain and simple.
Give me more cowbell. I know Andrew's just probably too young to understand that reference, but I love Will Rogers this year. I love that offense. Like you said, I think whether it's Max Johnson or it's Haynes King, I don't think they have the offense to compete on the road in Starkville against the Mike Leach offense. Give me Mississippi State by double digits.
Mississippi State's going to win. To be honest, like Jimbo Fisher, there's a lot of questions that need to be had about him and his tenure at Texas A&M because you're paying way too much for what you get. Mississippi State, even though I'm not the biggest fan of them, they should be Texas A&M. There's a reason why I never picked Texas A&M in all these because they end up losing every single big time they have a game. So
In the Arkansas A&M game, there was a 17-point swing. There was the KJ Jefferson fumble returned for a lateral. Do we call it a lateral or a handoff touchdown? And then the oink doink. That's 17 points difference. I think Mississippi State's very good team. Will Rogers is a very good quarterback. I'm a big fan of the Mike Leach offense. A&M, even though Mississippi State hasn't been a perennial very good team, A&M always struggles against Mississippi State. This is not a blowout series, even though A&M is always going to have the more talented team. I'm going to take Mississippi State here. We're going to get College Game Day, but I'm actually still very, very confident in the Bulldogs to pull this out in Starkville. All right. This is a very interesting game because this is two of the three best teams in the state of Virginia. And no, we're not talking about Virginia or Virginia Tech because neither of those teams can score. Liberty at Old Dominion.
Old Dominion, man, they're a feel-good story. They at this point last year, I think they had lost, I don't know, double-digit straight games against FBS teams. And then all of a sudden, something clicked. They won like 6 straight games. And Ricky Ronnie has that program going in the right direction now in the Sun Belt. But Liberty, I think, is the better team. They lost to Wake by 1 point. That's it. And they have a home win against UAB, a really good home win against UAB. So I'm going Liberty.
Liberty has a very solid secondary that I think has been super impressive. They have 6 interceptions already in the season. They picked off Sam Hartman twice. But I just think Old Dominion and Ollie Jennings III are going to be too much. Ollie Jennings is an absolute animal. Had a really good year last year, and he's way better this year somehow. Give me Old Dominion in a close one.
Old Dominion, another close one. I just am very impressed, even though they have a few close losses. But all in all, they're a very impressive team. I like them over Liberty.
I'm betting Old Dominion and Old Dominion for one reason alone. Hudson. Hudson, the dog, is the reason they will win this game. He has elite footwork with those Crocs. That's going to lead them to victory over this very good Liberty team. Hugh Freeze, probably a coach that will end up being on the move from Liberty after this season. Going to get into the group of 5/FCS game of the week. Probably not something anyone would expect. You would probably think of SMU UCF, which, by the way, is now rivaling with the NFL games because that's going to be on a Sunday. So get ready for that. Troy at Western Kentucky.
This is a good one. This is tight. Troy lost on the Hail Mary to App State. Western Kentucky has a really heartbreaking loss, too. They were at Indiana. They had the Hoosiers dead to rights, and they gave it away. They ended up losing in overtime. They have such a great offense. I'm going to go with the team I know a lot more about, and that's Western Kentucky and Tyson Helton and their offensive explosion that they give us each and every week, it seems. I'm riding with the Hilltoppers.
Yeah, Western Kentucky's passing offense is not going to compete with the Bailey Zappi and the Jarrett Stearns era of last season that took the college football world by storm, but this is still a very, very good passing attack. Austin Reed has stepped right in. There's actually kind of some pressure on that quarterback spot because you had Zappi setting records, but Reed has done a phenomenal job. Dawood Davis and Malachi Corley have been great this season. But at the same time, Troy's passing offense has been really good as well. I anticipate a shootout, and I think Western Kentucky is more set up to win those kinds of games, so I've got the Hilltoppers.
I like Western Kentucky too, mainly because, like you guys have mentioned, the offense is, even though it took a step back, it's still pretty good. And like I like what I've seen from Troy, even though they lost a heartbreaker, they look pretty well, solid. But like Dylan said, just the offense for Western Kentucky can hold their own and go overdrive if they need to. Look at last week, 77 against FIU. They have the talent. by the way, condolences to FIU. You should not get 77 skunked. It's just really, really.
I want to
Tyrese
see
Chambers out of there.
I want to see FIU against Warner, the team that gave up 98 to Stephen F. Austin.
Ooh,
Gross.
Warner might be favored. That FIU team is bad. Please save Tyrese Chambers. Give him the ball, or please let him go to a SEC or Big 12 program. I could talk about Western Kentucky or Troy's passing offense. I very easily could. But what I'm going to talk about is the narrative that this is the Jarrett Doege Bowl. Jarrett Doege transferred from West Virginia to go to Western Kentucky. When he lost the job, what did he do? He entered the transfer portal. Where do you think he went? Troy. And he's not even the starting quarterback at Troy. I don't even know if he's still on the roster, but when the opening depth charts came out for the start of the season, he was a backup. This is the battle for the Jarrett Doege school that he didn't play for either of those teams. I just think that's hilarious. Western Kentucky, I love David Davis and Corley, like Dylan talked about. I'm going to take them here. We're going to get College Game Day for like the third or fourth time going into the final game, the Power 5 game of the week, probably the biggest one with the most implications going into the late of the season. NC State goes into Death Valley to play the Clemson Tigers.
NC State did it last year. NC State's going to do it again. Clemson is improved, but they are not the best team in the ACC. Might not even be the second best team in the ACC. I think it's NC State and Florida State this season as the two best teams. But on this night in Death Valley, it'll be the Tigers going down.
Oh, all righty. Now we're cooking with gas. I love it. I'm going to go with Clemson because I feel like it's a somewhat of a safe pick. I mean, Clemson's won 36 straight at home. Like, I don't see that changing. And NC State's offense, we know what it's capable of, but I don't think it's looked quite as explosive as a lot of us in the transfer portal CFB have expected. They've played some cupcakes. I know they were playing, Charleston Southern and UConn. They put up numbers against them, but Texas Tech, they put up 27. I thought they should have had a lot more. East Carolina, I know they should have had a lot more there too. But if DJ Uiagalelei can pick up where he left off from last week, I think it's lights out. I think it could be a long night for the Wolfpack, but I do think the Wolfpack will keep it close. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, but I like Clemson.
I think that NC State's much more defensively sturdy than Lake, mainly because they actually know what coverages are and know what the tackles are. In general, like, I do think that NC State will take advantage of the fact that Clemson's secondary is a little bit too young. Clemson was starting a lot of freshmen last week in the back. This is an experienced NC State team. I do like NC State on the road, winning 2 straight, ending that home winning streak. And I like them for the New Year's Six. I don't think they'll make the playoff, but I like them for New Year's Six, NC State.
I wish I was brave enough to take NC State because I do think they're a very good team. And I do think that they actually could beat Clemson. And I'm also not super high on DJ. There was a throw last week that everybody was saying, oh, what a great touchdown pass. It went through the DB's hands. So we need to kind of let that one go. But at the end of the day, I think Clemson's defense is going to be better this week. That defensive line is insane, led by Brian Bruzzi. DJ is going to be better, not than last week, but just better than what we've seen over the last year combined. I think the home field advantage is what gives it to Clemson. Death Valley is a very tough place to play. I'll take Clemson by 3, but NC State, they definitely could win this game. And that wraps it up. Transfer Portal CFB Week 5 preview. Thank you so much to Chris Hassel for joining us. Chris, where can the people find you?
Hey, it was the best week to be on because this is the best slate of games we've seen. I'm kind of all over the place. My main job is CBS Sports HQ. I'm an anchor there and get to talk with a lot of our great experts, Brady Quinn, Danny Cannell, Josh Pate. I also call games for CBS Sports Network and Stadium, which mainly Conference USA, Mountain West, that sort of thing. But college football is my number one. I grew up in Iowa, as you could probably tell from the helmets behind me. Iowa football was like my religion growing up. So it's a perfect time of year. It's a great time of year. I'm in South Florida, so I'm hoping to skirt the hurricane. It's starting to get a little bit windy out, but looking forward to watching the games this week because it's going to be a blast.
It's going to be a great slate. And also for the people at home, Chris's Twitter, please watch the conference realignment parody video. It was the best thing I saw all week.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I do some parody vids too for CBS Sports. That's always fun. That's kind of a side thing. Whenever they send me an idea that they have, I'll do that. That's fun. That's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, and I cannot wait for the Oregon Duck to take on Roman Reigns in WrestleMania. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you're doing on the platform. Follow everybody on Twitter. Obviously, Chris's Twitter is going to be on the video. Have a great day.